Hey friends, Karen Baskett DIYer here. All right, so this may not be my average DIY video, but if you do follow this channel, you will know that I sometimes throw recipes out there or just any other random project that floats my boat. So I'm not sure if you have followed my new M&K Vlogs channel yet. If not, I will try to link it up here in the top, or it may show up here at the top here in just a second. But be sure to check that out. I have been into sourdough bread recently, and I got my starter from a girl from church, and she really got me onto this, and it's been so much fun. And then since I've been making it, I've had quite a few people say, I want to learn how to make it. And so I thought, what the heck, I might as well put a DIY video out there about how to do this. So I'm gonna preface it with a few things. I am not a pro, obviously. I have only made 4 loaves. My first loaf was not so great. My second loaf was good. My third loaf was amazing. And my 4th loaf, which is sitting right there under my cake stand, turned out pretty good. But the way I do it is just one of the many ways you can do it, okay? I'm not gonna say it's the one and only perfect way, or it is the perfect way. There are many ways, but I'm just gonna show you exactly how I do it. Take it with a grain of salt. If you wanna try it this way, totally fine. If you want to go online and find someone else's way of doing it, that's great also. I just have found that by combining some of the steps that my friend Greta taught me, along with watching some other videos on how to make it, specifically the recipe I'm going to be using is from Little Spoon Farm. She has tons of great recipes, but I just have kind of tweaked things a little bit here and there between those two people and have come up with what I think is a really great way to make sourdough. Now, like I said, I already had my starter given to me by a friend, but since then I have fed it and it has grown. I had to move it to a bigger jar, and this is what my starter stays in and lives in my refrigerator. The only time I feed this is whenever I'm gonna bake bread. So I only feed it when I need it. I am not gonna feed it every day and take care of it every day. Some people do that, some people like to do that. That's just how they wanna do it. I don't have time for that. So I feed it when I need it and bake with it pretty quickly, actually. So I'm just gonna show you a few steps right now. Then it'll have to sit for a while, and then there'll be more steps. This is a process, and a simplified process at that. So just keep that in mind. All right, so whenever I first started, I was using Arrowhead Mills unbleached organic bread flour. That is only because whenever I placed my Walmart order, I had King Arthur on my order and they were totally out, so they substituted for that Arrowhead Mills unbleached organic. Worked perfectly fine. I ran out, so now that I'm using King Arthur because I could not find the Arrowhead Mills the other day. So I just took my starter out of the refrigerator. I'm gonna open it up. I'm gonna let you take a look here. A little sticky, a little dried out maybe because maybe too much air got in there. But this is just what mine looks like right now, okay? I'm getting ready to feed it. Okay, I'm just stirring that up just a little bit. I've got some room temperature filtered water. It's actually a little warmer than room temperature because I did heat it up in my microwave. I've got 1 cup. And then I am gonna get 1 cup of my unbleached flour. Some people swear by this brand. I had great luck with that other brand, the Arrowhead Mills. Just gonna put my flour in here and I'm gonna go for just 3/4 cup right now and just see how this mixes. I just like to scrape the sides down, just making sure that there's like not a lot of dried flour. Again, I'm not claiming to be a pro because I'm still very new to this, but I feel like I picked it up rather quickly. Stir it around a lot. Something you do need to know, never, ever, ever wash this down your sink. This is really bad for your pipes. No, I did not learn that the hard way. Someone else told me that, so I believe them because this dries up and hardens really quickly. I'm going to just go ahead and wipe this off, wipe it clean, or I could let it dry up and flake it off. There's several ways to do all of this. I only ended up using 3/4 cup. I did not pour the rest of that in there because it looked like it was a good consistency. Now then, I am just going to grab another paper towel. You can use press and seal or saran wrap, whatever you want. Just, you don't want it to be too tight on there. That way it can breathe, and if it expands or rises above the level of your container, it'll have room. Also, never ever want to put like a screw down lid on anything like this because the gases that form in there can explode. I've seen videos, well, not videos, I've seen pictures in some of the videos that I've watched where people's sourdough actually exploded and busted their jar. Okay, so you can see here, this is my new level. I hope you can see that. Yeah. So I'm gonna move my painter's tape up to my new level. And once my dough has doubled in size, I am going to be able to start making my dough with it, okay? So let me just move these up. Move these, okay, I already moved that one and that one. I'm gonna move this one up. And that's my new line. Again, I'm gonna leave this sitting out of the fridge for several hours. It's been taking about 4 hours for it to double in size for me. My house stays at about 72 degrees, which my kids think that that is horribly hot, but it's comfortable to me. I also like to put it over here next to my refrigerator because the refrigerator puts off a little bit of heat. Back here in this corner tends to stay pretty warm, so that's where I like to keep it. I've also kept it in my pantry that I might just have to sneak in there and show you really quickly. My new pantry, I keep it in there sometimes because it gets really warm in there because we have an air vent in there. But it depends on how fast you want your process to go. Maybe I will do that because it does tend to rise faster if I put it in there. All right, let's just make our way in there. Guys, this is my fun new pantry. We just custom built it this past week and I am so happy with it. But anyways, I have a vent up there by the top shelf. I don't want it blowing directly on it, so I'm just gonna set it here on the second shelf. After I finish videoing, I may come in and put a paper plate under it. That way if it does overflow somehow, some way. And I'm just gonna wait a few hours and then it'll be ready. All right, so I just wanna show you the progress. It has been 1 hour and my dough has risen about this much. And so I'm just gonna continue to let it rise here in my warm pantry, and I am gonna just show you progress along the way. All right, here we are 2 hours later. I'm just gonna spin it around so you can see. It has grown a bit more. I'm about to have to leave for a little bit, so hopefully by the time I get back, it will be ready to start mixing my dough. Okay, here we are 5 hours later. It has not quite doubled, but it looks really great. I kind of want to open it up and show you. All right, so my starter has been rising for about 6 hours. And as you can see, it is very bubbly and active. So we're gonna do a float test to see if it's ready yet. And that simply means taking some water and seeing if it floats. It floats, so we are good to go. To make the dough, it calls for 1/4 of a cup of the starter, which is about 50 grams. So I've got my scales, they're zeroed out. And I'm gonna be putting that into my bowl. I went over just a bit, that's okay. Next, I need 1.5 cups plus 2 tablespoons of water, and this needs to be room temperature. Filtered water is recommended, so I've got that amount already here, and I need to zero out my scales again so that I can see that it's 350 grams. Next, I will need 2 teaspoons of fine sea salt, or about 10 grams. I like to use real salt. I need to zero out again. There's about 10 grams. And then I need 4 cups plus 2 tablespoons of flour, which is about 500 grams. Zero out. Right. Okay, now I'm just gonna take it off the scales and use my Danish whisk and mix it all up. All right, so now I've got it to a shaggy consistency. So now then I'm just gonna cover this with some press and seal, or you can use a damp tea towel, and then just leave it sitting on your counter. And in about 1 hour, I'll do the first stretch and fold. Okay, I'm about to do the first set of stretch and folds on my dough here. It's very important to wet your hands with super cold water. And that just helps prevent sticking. So you just want to scoop up under the whole thing. And then you will take it and stretch it up and fold it. Same thing, just turn your bowl about a quarter each time to get 4 folds in. Then you just cover it back up and repeat again in 30 minutes. All right, 30 minutes later, and it is time to do stretch and fold number 2. Again, really cold water to help prevent stickiness. Scoop up under, and then stretch and fold. This is the second time, and now then I'm just going to cover it back up and leave it out on my counter overnight for 7 to 10 hours. This is called bulk fermenting. All right, so my dough proofed on the counter overnight. Let me just show you here. It has risen in size 50-ish%, give or take a little, but this is how it's done for me every single time. So now it's time to turn it out onto a floured surface and laminate it, so they say. Now, I've only ever used a plastic bowl. I see a lot of people use glass bowls and theirs just falls right out. I do have to help mine a little. I don't know if that has to do with it being plastic or not. I'm just simply scraping it out. You don't want to tear it. I'm just going to stretch it out. Kind of into a big rectangle. And then I am going to fold it over, and then start kind of rolling it up, keeping it kind of tight. And this is where I don't do so great, so do this however you want. You just basically want to tuck and pull under at the same time. I haven't had an ugly loaf of bread yet. They've all turned out super pretty, even though I don't do this super great. It's supposed to form a tight skin on top by the way you pull and tuck. And more flour on here. Okay. Again, I don't do a super great job at this, but it works for me so far. I will say my first few loaves that I made, I did not have any fancy tools, but since then I have purchased some of the fun things. So I'm just gonna put a link to the kit I purchased down in the description below. You do not have to have these things. I don't even have rice flour yet that I should be putting in here, so I simply use a piece of parchment paper in mine, and again, it's worked just fine. Okay, so got my bench scraper. Just gonna use it and put it in here, flip it upside down so that the seam side or the ugly side is up. You can pinch it shut a little more if you want, or you can just leave it. Most of the time I just leave it. And now then this just needs to sit for a couple of hours out on my counter, or you can put it in the fridge, totally up to you. But I just leave it sitting on my counter. I'm gonna use the exact same piece of pressing steel that I used earlier to just kind of cover it. Or you can throw a tea towel over it. Okay, just gonna let this sit out for about 2 hours, and then it'll be time to score it and bake it. All right, so it has been 2 hours, and now then I'm just gonna preheat my oven to 450 while I prep my dough and score it and get it ready to bake. So now that it has been sitting for a couple of hours proofing in the proofing basket, I'm going to lightly flour my surface and then turn the dough out onto my floured surface and just prepare it to put in my baking pan. Now, I will tell you, I did make a mistake because I used my parchment paper, but I didn't put enough flour on my dough before putting it in there. So you will see here that it is sticking to my parchment paper ridiculously. I had to just pull it away, peel it away. I did lose some of my dough, but it's not a big deal. It's salvageable completely. You will see that here in just a second. But definitely a lesson I learned today was make sure that there is enough flour on top of my ball of dough whenever I put it into my proofing basket when using parchment paper. Now, had I used rice flour in my basket, I wouldn't have had this issue. So I'm just reshaping it, and hopefully it won't hurt the integrity of the dough and it'll survive and be just fine. I'm basically doing just what I had done earlier. I'm just kind of dragging it and tucking it and trying to form a tight skin over the top. Now then, I'm just going to add some flour to the top. And this is where some people get really fancy with their dough. They use stencils or doilies on top to create beautiful patterns. But I am just going to be scoring mine, and you're going to see that here in just a second. Now I'm just lifting it and placing it right in my cake pan. So I've actually had 2 loaves in the works. So you've only been seeing the one here on the left, but I am just putting one in a bread pan lined with parchment paper, as you see, and then here's this one in a cake pan lined with parchment paper that has already been used. That's okay. I'm scoring my loaf here. You know, at the end of the video, I'm going to show you several loaves that I've made and how I've scored them and made them pretty. And I really just want to say that if you're in any kind of sourdough Facebook groups, you can feel really intimidated and lots of pressure from those groups. I think everybody thinks that their loaf has to turn out spectacular the very first time. Yes, it is very exciting to take your very first loaf out of the oven and see the success, or maybe even the failure, and learn how you can improve better next time. I literally was jumping up and down the first time I had, with my very first loaf when it came out of the oven. I thought it was beautiful. When I cut into it, it wasn't so great, but it didn't keep me from trying. Again, I just keep seeing a lot of pressure in these groups about how perfect your loaves have to look, or at least people feel like theirs have to look perfect. They don't, you guys. This is a trial and error process, and I am just really proud of myself for stepping out of my own comfort zone and trying new things like baking bread. Who would have thunk it? This is not my forte, but it has been so much fun. I'm loving it. I'm thinking about the fact that, you know, our grandmothers didn't have all these amazing tools, or maybe they did, I don't know, but I really do wish that there were some older women out there on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok teaching us how to do this. I think there's way too much stress happening with bread making when it should just be fun and easy. So anyways, one of my daughter-in-laws has recently gotten into it, and it's just really fun getting a call from her and the excitement that she exudes whenever she pulls a loaf out of the oven and she FaceTimes me and shows me. It's just really fun, and I'm proud of her for stepping out and trying new things like this as well. It's not for everybody, but if you just want to try something fun and different, I say give it a try. All right, so now that I've got those loaves scored, I am going to use foil and tint my pans. You don't want it pushed down, you want it tinted up so that it has room to rise. A lot of people use a Dutch oven. I don't have a Dutch oven, and I probably won't be buying one anytime soon because this is working for me just fine for now. Okay, so now I'm sticking these loaves in my preheated oven. Again, it's at 450, and I'm gonna set a timer for 30 minutes. I'm also throwing some ice cubes in the pan that I have down below. This is just to add a little extra moisture and steam in the oven. Once the 30-minute timer has gone off, I'm going to pull the bread out and remove the foil. You'll see that it is nicely baked and has risen really well, but it still needs to be browned. You'll also notice my designs where I scored it. The deeper cuts that you make allow for expansion, because if you don't cut into it, it will just pop open on its own. So you might as well just score it and make a design. That's where that all comes into play. Now then, I'm just going to stick it back in for 25 minutes to finish baking and brown. And now you can definitely see the designs. They show up. The flour that I put on top makes it a little bit more predominant. You know, I mentioned earlier, people get really fancy, and I have to admit, it is pretty fun to see the pretty designs come out. Here you'll see that I am using a thermometer. I do highly recommend you getting one. If you don't have one, I picked this one up at the dollar store for $4. It has definitely made a difference in the consistency of my bread. My very first loaf was doughy. I'd mentioned that earlier, but since using a thermometer and letting it reach 210 internally, my bread has turned out wonderful each and every time since then. Now I'm just going to move my loaves over onto my cooling rack and allow them to cool completely. I usually wait about 2 hours before I cut into them, and it's just personal preference. You can cut into them warm and have it with butter. It's super great that way, but I find that I prefer waiting a couple of hours until they are totally cooled down before cutting into them. All right, so my bread has been cooling for several hours and I'm about to cut into it. I'm not gonna cut into this one because I am gonna be giving this to a friend, but I just wanted to go ahead and see how this one turned out. So I'm about to show you the crumb. You guys, there are so many terms and I don't even know all of them, and I haven't even used them properly, the ones that I do know in this video. But all I know is that I have learned to make sourdough bread and I'm loving it and I'm having so much fun with it. And I just want to encourage you to give it a try as well. Really good. And here I just want to show you my first loaf, my second loaf, and my third loaf. I've made quite a few since then, but I just want to say, if you mess up, just keep on keeping on. Get back in there and try again. Guys, I don't know everything there is to know about sourdough making. I just know that I have had a lot of fun doing this and sharing it with you. If you found this video helpful, I would love for you to comment down below and let me know. If you have any tips for me, be sure to share with me. All right, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share.